Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So we have a mother in Seattle, Washington coming forward and saying that she encountered a man in the women's locker room while there was a kids swim meet going on. And this man was showering when she confronted him, naturally asking him what the heck he was doing there. His response was, "I'm a trans woman." And this story exemplifies where things are heading when we allow this to continue. There is no justification for this. This cannot be the way. It should be considered criminal for a man to be in the locker room showering where there are women and girls present. Thankfully, in some states, it is criminal now. But in these blue states, we have women and girls suffering, women and children suffering, while this men's privilege movement continues. So, Washington mother, she said she encountered an adult male showering in the women's locker room while children were attending a swim meet at a local recreation centre, prompting renewed debate over policies governing access to sex-segregated facilities. And as far as I'm concerned, in Washington, there are no sex-segregated facilities, clearly. If somebody can identify themselves into the facility designated for the opposite sex, there are no sex-segregated facilities. And these people justify it, those that allow it, by saying that gender identity is a protected class, we have to be inclusive, we have to allow somebody to account for their gender identity, all of this. Some even go as far as to say trans women are women, knowing full well that women and little girls are encountering men in their private spaces. A silly label isn't going to change that fact. A silly label isn't going to take away the shock and the fear that women experience when this sort of thing happens to them. They don't simply say, "Oh, well, this is a trans woman. Trans women are women," and have no reaction whatsoever. Women have a visceral reaction when they encounter a man in their locker room and in their showers.
I don't know what else was taken without my permission. Like other photos that may not have been posted, because I don't know what else was taken in there while it was supposed to be a private area, when it was supposed to be somewhere that I should be able to just, do what I need to do and feel safe doing so,
So this woman is rightfully upset that she was filmed inside a women's room where she has an expectation of privacy and safety. All women have this expectation. And this is where the problem of this ideology comes in, because it has created a loophole for men to enter into our spaces. This has been the problem from the beginning that many women like myself, feminists, religious women have been speaking about. This is the danger that we have been pointing to. And I want to talk about our very obvious instincts. We all have instincts and intuition that tell us very accurately what sex someone is. And I want to read a quote to you. This is from a National Health Institute study. And this says, people are remarkably accurate, approaching ceiling at deciding whether faces are male or female, even when cues from hairstyle, makeup, or facial hair are minimized. So those people who are telling us that we are unable to recognize sex, this is gaslighting. This is predatory. It is abusive to tell us that we don't see what is directly in front of our eyes. And this is what predators count on. And I want to say that this is grooming. In the book, Sexual Grooming, Integrating Research, Practice, Prevention, and Policy, one of the things that it speaks about in here is that grooming is the normalization and desensitization of increasing boundary violations. So the ideology of transgenderism has allowed grooming on a massive scale to happen. It is normalizing boundary violations. It is desensitizing women to boundary violations. In the past, if this were to happen, if a man had come into the women's room, all of the women would be outraged. So this woman right now is very brave to address the obvious. The rest of the women in those rooms have been effectively groomed. The normalization of the boundary violation that is happening to them, they have assimilated it. And this is how grooming functions. And we must stop this grooming to protect ourselves and our daughters.
A reaction that is perfectly natural, a reaction that is innate for our own survival. But unfortunately, women and girls have been conditioned to ignore that reaction and to even see it as bigotry. This happened at Linwood Recreation Center in Seattle. The mother said, right before my daughter's first race, I went into the women's locker room to use the restroom. The locker room is set up like most public locker rooms, with an open shower area and 2 private shower stalls that have curtains. I know these showers well because my daughter uses them regularly. The curtains are too narrow for the width of the shower opening, and even when they are pulled closed, they often slide back open on both sides with movement from the water hitting them. As I walked towards the back of the locker room where the restrooms are located, I saw what appeared to be an adult male's exposed, erect penis through the gap in one of the shower curtains. The exposure was not something I was looking for. It was simply visible as I walked by, and it immediately caught my attention. I was shocked and unsure how to respond, so I continued to the restroom. These policies, they're not inclusive, they're not kind, they're not a way to protect people's rights. These policies are directly endangering women and little girls. These policies are exposing women and little girls to male genitalia in their locker rooms. These policies are opening women and little girls up to abuse. They directly endanger women and girls, women and children. And they open the door to AGPs to have access to women and girls. It's inviting predators, perverts who get off simply by being in a women's only space. Knowing that a woman can walk in any time, knowing that they are surrounded by women and girls, it is absolutely sick. And this is not any way for people to be living in a so-called civilized society. There is no justification for this. They told us that if we didn't allow these men to participate in sports, to use the locker room that aligned with their biological sex, that they would take their lives. This is the nonsense that they're using, completely unsubstantiated. And we don't rearrange society and tell women and girls that their natural instincts are bigotry and that some women have penises. Remember that? We don't push those lies to normalize men going into women's locker rooms, practicing their fetishes. We are normalizing perversion. We are normalizing abuse against women and children. And it's only by the grace of God that this woman wasn't in there with her daughter, unsuspectingly being exposed to male genitalia. But who knows how many girls walked in and out of that locker room that day while this guy was in the shower. Open showers. And they still say it's appropriate for men to come in there. When I came out, I saw a mother and her young daughter washing their hands at the sink. As I walked towards the exit, the person's genitals were again plainly visible from the walkway. At that point, I decided I needed to say something. I said, "Excuse me, this is the women's locker room." The person did not respond. So this is Maria Varchetto. She is the mother that has come forward retelling this ordeal and questioning why this was allowed to happen in the first place. So Varchetto went to the front desk to inform them that there was a man showering in the female locker room. Management then went into the women's locker room and addressed the man. The manager addressed the individual and said, "Excuse me, are you confused? This is the women's locker room." The individual responded only with, "I'm trans." You see why they've pushed this label on us for so long? We're not allowed to call them men. You know, you'll be demonized if you call them men. If you call them men, you'll be ostracized. You may even lose your job. You'll be demonetized on your platforms. You'll be thrown off various platforms. Remember that era that we went through? They did all of that, pushing these labels onto us so that the man in the women's locker room can turn around and say, "I'm trans. This is my gender identity. I'm allowed to be in here." The guy that was caught pleasuring himself in the Planet Fitness women's showers by an unsuspecting member who walked into the women's shower. She filmed his shadow. She was able to see what he was doing via his shadow. It was very obvious. He turned around and said, "I'm allowed to be here." And what's so disturbing is that they're not lying, because they have identified themselves into the women's locker room. To the manager's credit, at least he confronted this man and said, "Are you confused? What the heck are you doing here?" To his credit, he didn't proceed to turn around and say, that's your opinion. Like the story about the YMCA in San Francisco, a woman who reported it to management or to staff when she said there's a man in our changing rooms. She was told, well, that's your opinion. Varchetto said the manager left after the exchange. Unfortunately, the manager knows that gender identity takes precedence. My family loves the Linwood Recreation Centre, but after this experience, I no longer feel comfortable allowing my daughter to use the women's locker room by herself. If I'm not with her, I ask her to use one of the family locker rooms instead. She has told me she feels guilty doing that because there are only a handful of family locker rooms, and families with small children are often waiting to use them. So Fox News reached out to Nathan MacDonald, who is the manager of communications at the City of Linwood. In a statement, he said on Sunday, July 12, our Linwood Recreation staff received a complaint that a self-identifying trans woman was using a shower stall inside the women's locker room. We can confirm that the complaint was filed and that our staff conferred with both parties. Our recreation centre facilities comply with Washington Administrative Code 162-32060, which requires all entities to allow individuals to use gender-segregated facilities, including locker rooms and dressing rooms that correspond with their what? Gender expression or gender identity. Since the incident, our facilities team has installed new full-size shower curtains in the locker rooms and is exploring other modifications to our shower facilities to ensure the privacy of all recreation centre patrons. This cannot be the way forward in these woke states that allow gender identity to take precedence over somebody's sex. This will only end in parents, women and children feeling that they can no longer use these facilities. At best, it will end in women and little girls excluding themselves from these local facilities because they no longer feel safe. There are some women, there are some parents who hear this story and they will never set foot in that recreation centre again. Are they going to continue to watch women and girls exclude themselves from sports while claiming to be all about inclusion? Are they going to continue to watch parents withdraw their kids from sports because they don't feel safe allowing their kids to go to these facilities anymore? Where does it stop? Or are they going to wait until something even worse happens? SAs in these facilities. And don't tell me this doesn't happen, because it does happen. There are lawsuits going on as we speak because the very thing they said doesn't happen, happened. And obviously, being exposed to male genitalia is bad enough in a place where you expect to be safe, in a place that is supposed to be for women only. But it's going to get to a point where there's going to be lawsuits. It shouldn't have to get to that point for change to be made. So all I can suggest is that you make it clear that none of these lawmakers are getting your vote if they refuse to protect children, if they refuse to protect women and girls. Until that is made clear, I guess they're going to believe that they can continue to get away with it. This story is absolutely appalling, and I commend the mother, Maria, for coming forward and telling it, because people need to know this is still very much an issue and it's far from over, and something has to be done. And as far as I'm concerned, that man, he was in the women's locker room exposing himself, wants locking up. So let me know what you think. What do you think is the solution to this? Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video. And a huge thanks to all of those who have hyped my videos. It is greatly appreciated.